I'm Charlie Ruigrok. I am Digital Trade Advisor for the East Midlands. There are about 10 digital advisors, all based around the regions, advising on specific topics. I'm going to talk to you about eMarketplaces today. It's one of the things that we cover. So I'm going to give you a bit of an intro into the e-exporting program, of which I sit under. Can I just get a show of hands who works with UKTI already? Anybody? Aware of UKTI as a whole? Good, so there's a bit of an understanding there. How digital can break down barriers, and how accessing online marketplaces is an easy route into market. And also which models are available. It may just think like Amazon and eBay are very simple, but there are many different ways that you can set up your business to fit into these models as well. So the exporting program, it was set up about 2 years ago. It was launched at a spring fair, in fact. So it entails the government trying to advise private businesses on exporting internationally online. And it's a very successful program. It's been really oversubscribed, which is really good to hear, and just shows a need for it. And what we do is offer impartial, practical advice on how to sell internationally online. There are a lot of companies already selling internationally online without even knowing it, via their own website or via eMarketplaces or other channels, and have just kind of fallen into it. So the government is kind of trying to put more structure to that, more guidance in place, so that you can avoid some of the pitfalls and make it as successful as possible. So we go through things like your own website, how you can optimize it for international selling, and we had a great seminar on that yesterday, and it's something we give a lot of advice on. B2C e-marketplaces, so the likes of Amazon and eBay. There are about, UKTI when we started identified about 400 e-marketplaces, and we've entered into agreements with about 20 to 30, which is a memorandum of understanding, which has a process, a person of contact, and a preferential rate in some cases as well. So we can help identify those for you, which markets would be right for you, and the different models. As well as flash and private sales. It's not a kind of a main focus for us, but we do cover it as well. And it is a different model that can be adapted to different businesses and really drive some big volume into selling. And also a fairly newer one is B2B e-marketplaces. And a lot of you may be aware of Alibaba.com. And that's a B2B e-marketplace and connects suppliers to each other. So that was where that sits. And there are a whole raft of them as well as Amazon Business setting up. So it's a B2B channel. So why would you use online channels? Essentially, it breaks down barriers. Because you have a website, people can view you from all over the world. It means that shipping to France is the same as shipping to Kent. You've just got a ferry in between. So it really doesn't matter where the sale's coming from. It's as long as you're getting that lead in, that order, you can ship it and dispatch it in the same methods. So there are no barriers anymore. I say there's no barriers, there's no borders anymore. The barriers are still language and culture. And this is cross-border trade. And this cross-border trade is very successful, especially in Europe and other countries where we have tax thresholds. So in Germany, for instance, before you sell £100,000, you pay no VAT to the German government. So it means that you can actually be more profitable in certain markets as well. So I just want to give you a brief overview of the different landscapes, the e-commerce environments that are out there. The UK are in a very good spot at the moment. We tend to be the leaders within Europe in terms of e-commerce. We are more advanced, partially due to our logistics network. We're very switched on, we're very enthusiastic, and we're very well connected as well, whereas other places in Europe are not so much. So if you look at the UK, it makes up about $82 billion worth of sales. That pales in comparisons to some of the bigger ones. So the USA, for instance, is one of the biggest, $305 billion each year in e-commerce sales. But again, that is quite insignificant when you look at China's. And China's is just here, it's 426 billion. And China's is growing faster than anyone else's. China is a unique case because it's almost like a parallel universe over there. They don't have eBay and Amazon. They don't have Twitter and Facebook. They have Taobao and JD.com for their selling platforms, and WeChat and Weibo for their social media. So it's setting up in a slightly different way and managing that in a slightly different way. But again, Japan, very affluent, very enthusiastic eMarketplaces, and the consumers have set this high standard. Well, I say the consumers. Amazon have set a very high standard of customers selling internationally. Customers now expect you to place an order on one day and receive it the next day. And that is down and for small businesses, that can be quite challenging. So it means that you need to overcome these obstacles so that people can sell and convert on these platforms. So why would you use eMarketplaces? Talking about your own site, your own website, that is your most margin-rich sales opportunity. You retain all your margin, apart from marketing costs and logistics costs. All your margin from your website goes into your pocket, which is fantastic. The negative of that is you need to drive sales, drive traffic to your website, which can be costly, take time. The good thing about eMarketplaces is they already have active users on them. The people are purchasing, they are shopping right now. So if you are not in those positions, you are not selling. It's as simple as that. What models do they operate? So, that's a very long-winded question, and I'm trying to keep this as short as possible, so sorry if I'm just blurting it out. You can hold the stock yourself, and you can dispatch from your warehousing, and that's why if you're a distributor or a wholesaler, e-commerce via eMarketplaces work very well. So are there any wholesalers or distributors here? Fantastic. It means that you can connect your warehouse to eMarketplaces and open up sales channels going direct to consumer and selling at a higher margin than if you're going into retail. So wholesale and distribution works very well in eMarketplaces, as does manufacturers. And the reason for that is, rather than going to a distributor, rather than going to the retail routes, they can sell direct, which means, again, they retain margin. The benefit is that they can do volume through these sales sites. The difference between the two, you might think, okay, so who's got the better advantage, the distributors or the manufacturers? Both have great opportunities. The manufacturer because they're selling direct, but the distributor because they have breadth of product and they can do a lot in volume sales. So maybe slightly less margin than the manufacturer, but they can really ramp up volume. And there are some good companies out there, good marketplaces, good integrators, good tools that can really drive that volume. And I've seen some really good success in that area. Will this, and this is a good concern for manufacturers, is will this damage my brand? Not really. People don't really care what the brand is on Amazon. They want to buy that product. And if they want to buy that product, there's probably already awareness out there. And yes, you do look a little bit sterilized in terms of your brand messaging and your brand equity on those marketplaces, but it's at the point of purchase. If you want to create brand equity and brand presence, there's other channels to do that via social media and other brand exercises online that you can do. So will it damage your brand? Probably not. Is there a problem with pricing? Yes. But then you have to be clever with segmentation as well as doing other little things that you can do to optimize that sale. Amazon and other Amazon's the worst at it, let's be honest. They will always try for the bottom price and the lowest price. So you can use other eMarketplaces that avoid Amazon. So for instance, in France, La Redoute, the famous French catalogue, French fashion, they tend to be high to mid-end. So if you've got a more premium product, you can use that marketplace. And there are other La Redoute. Yeah, it's an old fashion catalogue that they've got a really good online model. And I'll go through some of the eMarketplaces in a short while. But yeah, Laradoo is a good one for good premium brands. The Middle East opening up for premium brands, so Marca VIP over there is really good. So these are, so essentially within this 400 eMarketplaces that UKTI identified, there is a product niche for you, or a marketplace for your model. Why else would you use eMarketplaces? Because they're a trusted environment. People are used to shopping on these platforms all day, every day. And there are different ones. There's a niche one for each category. I'm not going to go through all of these points because I'm sure you can all read. The good thing about selling on these platforms is that you can control the price. So even though Amazon does try and race you to the bottom, you can set the price and say, I am comfortable at this point. It's a good entry into market, so that if you want to test a new market, if you want to look at France as a growth opportunity, or Germany as a growth opportunity, going through a marketplace is a great way to do that, because you can see the appetite, see how well the product sells. You can also do some testing to see, okay, does this product sell well in this region, or does this product sell well? So you can do some real nice testing and range segmentation via that way. So you need to consider, are eMarketplaces right for you? And in most cases, I would say yes, because they're there. People are actively shopping. So if you have a consumer good, and you want to put your product in the hands of the consumer, why wouldn't you use an eMarketplace? You have to consider things like listing costs, commissions, currency changes. That's always a game to play on the currency markets. Delivery options and returns, and this as well as local support. And this is kind of a very key one. So it's getting the right fulfillment partner involved. And you can choose this dependent on the market you're going to. So you can use fulfillment centers. If shipping is too expensive for one item or two items into America, for instance, you could start warehousing in America. And there are third-party logistics agencies over there where you can just put your products in a bonded warehouse and use their distribution network. So it's very easy to do it that way. Whereas if you want to distribute yourself using one of the couriers in Europe, you can do that, and it means that it's a very effective way of doing it. So it's finding the right model for the right countries that work for you. You can also do dropship model, which is a really good model if you're just an internet retailer and you want to sell lots of product. Essentially, you take the order and you place an order instantly with your wholesaler or your distributor, and it ships from there. So this works really well if you don't have warehousing facilities and you don't have stocking facilities, but you are good at online marketing, because you can make the sale, add your commission, and they do all the work. So, and you can do that cross-border as well. So if you have a manufacturer in the US, you can take the order and they can distribute it out of their warehousing. So there are different options there. And some of the eMarketplaces as well have their own fulfillment systems. So you can tie into their fulfillment systems. So even if it's an order that's on your website, you can use Amazon's logistics network to distribute that order as well. And that's FBA, Amazon FBA, and that works quite well. It all depends on the product category you're in, the product size, the weights, the shippers, all these things. And again, the more volume you sell through couriers and the more you send, the cheaper the rates become, because you're doing more volume. eMarketplaces tend to be very numbers driven. It is a volume game, and that's where you really want to hit a critical mass of selling. Local language and support is critical here. I talk to a lot of clients about translation, and some of them have used translation programs before, like Google Translate, and come unstuck quite quickly because of the certain niche terminology that's used in different markets, as well as the translation program sometimes switch around included and excluded. So one company was selling a drinks cabinet and it said bottles included, and they got quite a few complaints, rightly so, from one market. So that's very key. Also, customer support. It doesn't go away just because they're further away. They will probably still ask you for returns. And especially in Germany, they have a returns rate of up to 40% in certain categories. It tends to be shoes and fashions, but it could be as high as that. So you need to consider those things. Can you support that? And what resources do you have internally to do that? Allegro in Poland is a really good e-marketplace because Amazon doesn't exist in Poland. So Allegro has taken on that mantle. But you need a Polish customer returns speaker, and you need a Polish address. So you can use logistics networks to do the returns address, but you need the local speaker. So these are kind of challenges that you can address one by one. So it's really not that difficult. Let's have a look at some of the e-marketplaces around the world. I've spoken a lot about Amazon, and if any of you have worked with Amazon before, they are not the easiest to work with. They're a very systems-based company, and there is no outsider influence, which means that you are unlikely to get an account manager, and it can be quite restrictive. However, in America, they are the largest, and they do so much volume. So it's undeniable. In Brazil, however, and can I just say, Amazon isn't global. There are only 16 iterations of Amazon. So they're big in America, they're big in Japan, they're big in the UK, but for instance, they don't exist in Holland at all, they don't exist in Poland, and in Australia, they only sell books. And a website that only sells books is never going to work. Because it's just ridiculous. So the models vary as well, depending on country to country. So the different product sets are different in America to the UK, and that depends on legislation and different rules. And Amazon like to play around as well and do different things. So in India, for instance, Amazon's launched fairly recently, in Amazon's terms, but they are trialing things like payment on delivery. And that's quite a scary mechanism to get your head around, especially when you're looking at if they roll that out into Germany and the returns rate is 40% and you pay on delivery, does that mean you would have to send 3 boxes and they would only pay for 1 when it gets there and you ship 3 items? So it gets quite scary at that point. Mercado Libre in Brazil is very big. The Middle East has opened up really quite substantially in terms of e-marketplaces and e-commerce, and there's a good reason for that because the retail outlets are franchised and they are very well monopolized by some of the sheiks. So to get into those sales channels is very difficult. But the consumers over there are feeling quite frustrated because they don't have the breadth of range that they want. E-commerce has really stepped in and filled that gap for them. So they're very active and it's a real kind of one to watch at the moment. ASOS have got a e-marketplace, so you can sell fashion through. But Rakuten, who are actually here today somewhere in one of the stands, they started off in Japan and are really well there. And it's probably one of the biggest companies you don't know about, the things that they own and operate. They bought Play.com in 2011 and are playing a longer term game in terms of growing their audience. But in the next few years, that will probably become a household name. And they're going to start operating a globalized model. So you can list in .co.uk and you can turn on different markets. So you can turn on Spain at the moment without doing any translation or any problems at all, and that's going to roll out to Germany and France in Q2 this year. The big one is China, I have to say. And China, Tmall, is the biggest e-marketplace in the world. It's got more users than anyone else. It's massive. To put it in comparison, Singles Day, which is an event day, the equivalent of Black Friday in China, was invented by Tmall. And on Singles Day, they did $9.6 billion worth in the day. And that's all sales in China, to be fair, but primarily through Tmall. E-marketplaces in China make up 90% of sales. So yeah, 9.6 billion. In Black Friday, all US e-commerce sales was 2.4 billion. So that just shows the scale of things in China. Another e-marketplace in China, JD.com were processing 120,000 orders a minute. As a digital person, that I still haven't got my head around how that is physically capable from a logistics and a server point of view. They must have set server rooms on fire doing that. And again, so whichever marketplace you want to target, whichever market you want to target, there's an option there for you. So again, JD.com, 118 million active users a month. So I'm just going to talk really briefly through some of these. And these are the UKTI terms. So we've got £1,000 reduction on setup charge. It's a really good operation, JD.com. Really like working with them. Amazon.co.jp, slightly different over there, slightly more approachable. We have a 3-month free subscription to that service. Again, you can use the Amazon fulfillment in Japan, so you can ship by the container load over there or bulk packaging. Japan can be slightly bureaucratic, as can the British, in terms of you need to set up your procedures and the documentation first. But once you've passed that initial pain point, it's a really active e-commerce environment. Lazada, so Southeast Asia, again, a very good e-commerce environment. Individually, Vietnam, Thailand, Singapore might not be target markets for you, but to go on a platform like this, you can turn them all on at the same time. And if you've got a good distributor network over there, or you've got a preferential rate to a courier, then there's nothing to stop you to start shipping over there. And the fact that you can have good quality British-made products, that provenance is still there in a lot of countries. And it means that there is no issues of selling direct to consumer. You don't need a distributor anymore. You don't need a retail outlet. You don't need bricks and mortar. These customers are actively shopping, and this site has 40 unique monthly visitors. So they're actively there. It's if you want to put your product in front of them. Trade Me in New Zealand, again, Amazon doesn't exist in New Zealand, and Trade Me, I really like working with the guys there. They're really friendly, they're really approachable, they'll account manage you all the way through to setup, and the commission rates are, we've got a negotiated rate of about 8%, so really not that expensive to sell through them. Cdiscount in France, and we have a whole list of these. This is the condensed list as well, so it absolutely boggles the mind. Cdiscount in France is part of the Casino Group, biggest supermarket chain in France, or one of them, and this is their online operation. Again, you don't have to set up with a buyer in Cdiscount. You can just set up yourself as a merchant, as a seller. You don't, as long as you comply to the site's terms and conditions, you don't need their input that much once you're set up. Obviously, you need to comply to their terms and conditions, and there's certain things that you can do to optimize your listings. And once you're on these sites, it's a game of getting yourself to the top of the listings, as it is with Google. You just need to make sure that you're in the prime position for your product, and it's positioned right, and it converts well. So things you can do on pricing and product descriptions are key there. Allegro, another one of my favorites in Poland. Really nice to work with, and they give you £1,000 worth of free marketing spend once you set up, and this helps you promote your listings. It means that you can create banners and campaigns based around this, and it really helps you start that boosting of sales. However, we've got a document for like this for most of the eMarketplaces that we work with, and it just gives you really good snippets of customer services. Returns address must be in Polish. Okay, so that's something you need to consider. Legalities, okay, what's there that we need to consider? And selling within Poland, I think they have a €100,000 limit before you have to register for that country for VAT registration. So again, before you hit that threshold, it's a really good marketplace. And this is Provilia slightly differently. So Provilia is a flash sale site. So if you do have stock in your warehouse that you can't shift, you can send it out to Provilia quite quickly without interrupting the rest of your business. So if you want to do some brand protection, but you want to clear stock out of your warehouse, you can use a site like Provilia or another flash sale site to move those items. And it's just worth considering. Marker VIP, again, as I've said, the e-commerce environment over there is really kind of on the edge of becoming big, and they are really kind of adopting these new models. So Marker VIP works really well. So there's a lot of e-marketplaces out there. It's what I'm trying to get. There's one for everyone. How do you get to them quickly? And this is where distributors and wholesalers can really kind of tap into a wider network quickly through something called aggregators or middleware companies. And essentially you send your stock and your product feed to these middleware companies, and they syndicate your data out to all these e-marketplaces around the world. They collect all the orders and send them back aggregated in one stream of orders into your systems. And it really is as simple as that. What you want to get to with e-commerce is making it as efficient as possible. You want as many orders as possible. You don't care where they're from. You want all the orders, all these sales routes open, and all the orders to come back in an efficient way so that they hit your warehousing and are dispatched within an hour, within a day, without you even touching it. If you have to log into a system once a day, check your orders, print them out, pick them, box it, ship it, takes so much time. Is it really worth it when you can invest in order management systems that can do that? So the likes of Linworks, Lazook are order management stock holding systems that connect to a lot of these e-marketplaces straight away without these aggregators. So you can be more efficient essentially. So efficiency is the key so that you can drive the volume. So here's an example of an integrator, but I like to call these accelerators. So once you've got your back-end systems, your order management systems set up, it's time to look at an integrator. NetEven, we've got an agreement with them and a reduced rate, but the more common one is Channel Advisor. Tends to be more costly, but We Are Pentagon is another, and there are more and more and more. So you enter in an agreement with NetEven, and essentially you come up with a rollout plan and say, right, I have a high to mid-end range product. I want to get onto Laredo. And they say, okay, we've already got a relationship with them. We've already got an integration with them. All we have to do is connect your product feed and your order management system to theirs. And that's a one-piece project work. And once it's up and set and running, you really don't need much more input after that. And you can say, okay, that's worked really well. I want to go on Spartoo next. And then once they set that up, you can go wider and wider as well and kind of target more and more. So it works really well as a system, but you have to get the basics right before you go on to these middleware companies. You need to make sure your order management and your stock management is efficient, because if you go onto these and you're getting orders in from all over the world too quickly for you to process, your seller rating will drop down significantly. Amazon will delist you, and then your business will suffer, and it will take you more time to get set back up than it would be to do it properly from the start. And this scares a lot of people. Flash sale. You may be familiar with Groupon, Voucher, and they do have a bit of a bad name in the UK. But in America, they are hugely popular, and they tend to be more member sale sites, so that you have to subscribe to them. You are part of a community, and you get preferential rates through that. And selling through flash or member sale sites means that you get very spiky sales graphs, because you have very low items low number of SKUs that you sell. So you might only put 4 or 5 items on at a time, but you do a lot of volume very quickly. The sales periods might only be the space of a couple of days or a week. So within that period, you can have thousands, hundreds of thousands of orders coming through. So it's good to kind of bridge that gap when you do have low sales volumes. I talk to a lot of clients that have a very busy Christmas period, and then the rest of the year it can be quite dull or quite muted. So if they injected some flash sale sites into their quieter periods, it can really help increase cash flow into the business, and it can be quite an effective way of doing it. A couple of these that I like to use are the APAC sales group, My Sales, again, international. VIP.com in China is absolutely massive, and the volume that goes through there is scary again. Anytime you talk about China, the volumes are scary, but it needs to be a considered project. Vente Privé in France is very big in Europe, but America is where it kind of really hits the mark in Gilt, My Habit, Hootlook, and the others. So yeah, and Groupon as well. I had a client just before Christmas in one state, went on to Groupon as a trial. They did 11,000 orders in a month. And that was really successful for them, and that kind of has really kind of spurred them on to kind of go, okay, let's roll this out further and let's really develop that idea as a model.